I've been working on this lasagna recipe for years. It may be the best thing I make, but I only do it for special occasions and in large quantities because it's an astounding amount of work. I spread out the labor across 3 days. Day 1, I make my very non-traditional Bolognese sauce. I have a whole video on this, but here is the short version. A pound of carrots and a large red onion go in the food processor, and then a pound of chicken livers. Yes, chicken livers. Fry the veggies in a big Dutch oven, then dump them out. Put in 3 pounds of ground meat, whatever you want. Cook it on high heat, stirring aggressively with a wooden spoon to break it all up. After 15 or 20 minutes, the water will boil off and you can fry the meat in its own fat until it's brown. Dump in the chicken livers in a little can of tomato paste, and the second it looks like the bottom of the pan is going to burn, pour in a whole bottle of white wine and scrape the bottom clean. Vegetables go back in, then 3 big cans of crushed tomatoes. This is optional, but I like a big spoonful of liquid chicken bouillon. Reduce the heat to a simmer and cook for 3 hours, stirring every now and then. During the last hour, throw in some dried herbs, pepper, and a bunch of balsamic vinegar. Yes, my recipe is pretty acidic, but I think that's what makes it taste so good inside a lasagna, where all of the other flavors really need some brightening. When 3 hours is up, taste it and add salt, more vinegar, or anything you think it needs. That makes about twice what you will use in the lasagna. We can freeze the rest later, but for now, I just let the pot cool down and throw the whole batch in the fridge. First job on day 2 is to boil about 8 ounces of spinach, which is 1 bag or 1/2 of one of these bins. Cover it up so it'll steam and get a bowl of ice water ready. Stir it around, and when it's all just wilted down after maybe 2 minutes of cooking, pull it out into the ice water. That spider strainer I've got there is really useful for this whole recipe, by the way. You'll see why. Shocking the spinach in the ice water will set the color green. It'll stop it from going brown. You do not need a food processor to make fresh pasta dough, but it makes it real easy. Crack in 4 eggs, a teaspoon of salt, and 2 cups of flour, then whiz it up. This is more egg than you would normally put in fresh pasta. Why? Because eggy pasta stays firm even after it bakes in the lasagna. It doesn't go mushy. You're looking to see this come together into one giant ball, then dump it out onto some plastic wrap. Your dough may be more or less sticky, it doesn't matter. We're going to adjust the flour content when we roll it out. That's the yellow dough. Now we're going to do the green dough. Squeeze as much of the water out of the spinach as you can and then put it in the food processor with just 3 eggs this time. The spinach is equal to the moisture of 1 egg. Teaspoon of salt, then give it a preliminary whiz just to get the spinach cut up. Then comes 2 cups of flour like before and whiz it up like before until it comes together into one big ball. Wrap up the doughs and throw them in the fridge for at least a half hour. If we tried to roll them out now, they would just fall apart. They need to hydrate. While we're waiting, we will make our cheese sauce. Stick of butter goes in a big pan, medium heat goes on, and while it melts, I will chop up as much garlic as I can stand to peel. That's about a whole head. Then whisk in enough flour to make a thick paste, no more than a cup. That is a roux, it will thicken our sauce. Garlic goes in, then we whisk in a half gallon of milk, a little bit at a time. You put in too much, it'll slosh right out of the pan as you stir. Once all the milk is in, pull the pan off the heat and let it cool until it stops bubbling. Now comes the star ingredient, a whole 7-ounce block of Pecorino cheese. You could use Parmesan, but I think the acidity of a sheep's milk cheese really cuts better through this sauce. Just grate the whole thing in. If you did this while the sauce was still boiling, the cheese would go grainy. It must be off the boil. Whisk it in, and don't worry if it doesn't go totally smooth. It's all going to melt in the oven. Give it a taste. The cheese is super salty, but I'm going to add even more salt. I want this sauce to be the primary source of salt for the entire lasagna. I am making it too salty deliberately. Okay, now we'll fill up the biggest pot that we've got with water, throw in some big pinches of salt, and turn the heat on high. Here is my standard 6-inch wide pasta roller. You can get these for $25. It's secured to the counter with a C-clamp that came with it. Here's our first dough ball. I'll dust it with flour so that I can handle it, and I'll cut it in half. You could roll the whole thing out at once, but if you're new at this, I recommend 1/2 at a time. I'll smush it out into a rectangle, dust it with plenty of flour, then run it through on the thickest setting. That's kind of raggedy. I'll fold it up, dust it, and run it through again. Then fold it, dust it, then run it through again, and then again. We are not shaping the dough yet, we're just kneading it. And we're making sure that it has the right amount of flour. If it's too wet, it won't roll smooth. So you just add flour and pass it through until it does roll smooth. Now we're ready to shape it. Just reduce the thickness by 1 or 2 clicks and send it through. Reduce the thickness by another click or 2, then send it through. This is way easier if you have another person to help you feed it into the machine. It's also easier if you're not trying to keep your big stupid body out of the shot. For lasagna, I take this down to the second to last setting. If it's super thin, it'll go mushy when it bakes. Now's the time to think about what you're going to bake this in. I use these 11 by 19 inch disposable pans because I don't have a real pan that's big enough. We want to cut our pasta as long as the pan is, bearing in mind that it will expand a couple of inches in length as it boils. That basically means I need to cut these as long as my 17-inch cutting board, and I find that it's really easy to cut pasta with kitchen scissors. They don't make the cleanest edges, but nobody's going to see these edges. I'm cutting each sheet about 17 inches long, then cutting it up the middle into 2 ribbons. They don't have to be perfect at all. Here's the most giant bowl I've got filled with ice water. Then quickly, before they stick to each other, we'll lay the pasta ribbons into the boiling water. When they puff up and float aggressively to the top, they are done. That was just 2 minutes. Into the cold water they go to stop the cooking. If you don't do that, they'll go gummy. Here's almost every kitchen towel that I've got laid out on my table. We'll pull out 1 noodle at a time, swipe the water off, and lay them side by side on the towels. Then I'll take another towel and dry off the top-facing sides. They don't have to be bone dry, but if they're soaking wet, they'll start to dissolve, and they'll make the lasagna runny. Now we go back and do it all over again with the other half of the yellow dough. When you get more confident at this, you can roll out 1 whole batch at a time, especially if you have a second pair of hands helping you. Replenish the ice water, boil for 2 minutes, shock them to stop the cooking, dry them off on the towels. Now let's roll out the green dough. That lacks contrast. Much better. A little bit of flour, cut it in half, smush it into a rectangle, and feed it through on the widest setting. Yuck! That means this dough needs more flour. We'll just dust it and feed it through. Dust it and feed it through. This is why we didn't need to be precise about our measurements when we made this dough. It will simply absorb all the flour it requires as we need it, and it will tell us when it's had enough by rolling out smooth in one piece. If you don't want to see any remnants of actual spinach in your pasta, there are recipes out there that basically just have you extract the chlorophyll from the spinach and then put that in the dough. I like to see the little pieces of leaves in there. That way we can all pretend that we're eating a vegetable when we have our lasagna. Cut this into 17-inch ribbons as before, boil and shock as before, dry as before, then do the other half. Man, I love fresh pasta. It tastes nothing like the dried stuff. It's amazing. Gotta make ourselves some room, lay down a sheet pan to help us lift that flimsy foil pan around, then oil up the foil to keep the lasagna from sticking, and lay in our first layer of pasta. If some of the noodles break apart, it really doesn't matter, and it doesn't matter which sauce you put in first, though it does help if the cheese sauce is warm, otherwise you won't be able to smooth it out into a thin layer. Now we do a layer of green pasta and a layer of our Bolognese, which I've left out at room temperature for a bit. Again, if it's really cold, you won't be able to spread it nice and thin. You get the idea. Just build up as many alternating layers as you have pasta and sauce to spare. I got in 7 layers. Then on the very top layer, I just dab a little of the Bolognese and a little of the cheese sauce, just streaks of both of them on top. It goes into a 400 Fahrenheit oven for 20 minutes. Out it comes, and that looks not very different at all and not that good. Don't worry, we're not done with it yet. That was just the first bake. Let it cool down. But if you're hungry now, pull out a little pan, melt in some butter, and fry off whatever scraps of pasta you have left over. A little bit of cheese on top, little red pepper flake, very nice. Throw the lasagna in the fridge, and here we are on day 3. The day we actually eat is going to be the easiest day, which makes this really good for dinner parties. The hard part is behind us. I'm just prepping some garlic and shallots to make a quick tomato sauce. Fry those in oil with a big squeeze of tomato paste, then in go 2 28-ounce cans of crushed tomatoes and a splash of white wine if you've got it. Season that and simmer it for a half hour, stirring frequently, during which time we will grab a pound of mozzarella, whatever kind you like, and roughly grate it up. Here's our chilled lasagna, and I'm going to cut this into 12 pieces. That's a really big portion. If you're going to eat this with anything else, I would do 15 pieces or even 18. Get a baking sheet and do not put foil down like I did. The lasagna will stick to the foil. It's just that my baking pans are really oxidized. I need to clean them and I haven't yet. Oil up the pan, then lift out a piece with a spatula. Look at that nice, clean cut you get by cutting it cold. If we had cut this while it was hot, the pieces would have come out looking like Pizza the Hut.
Where's my money?
Cover up the top with grated mozz, and in it goes 400 degrees on the convection setting if you've got it. That'll really help brown everything. I'm just doing one piece for demonstration purposes, but you could do the entire lasagna spread out across 2 or 3 sheet pans. Just keep the pieces as separated as possible. We want the hot air to circulate all around each piece. Give it 20 minutes to heat everything through. If the cheese isn't browning enough, flip on the broiler at the very end. That's what I did, and out it comes. I'll test my red sauce for seasoning, need some salt, then I'll put a thin layer of sauce on my plate and float the lasagna on top. Tear on some fresh basil, and with this 2-stage baking method, every piece is an edge piece. Also, baked pasta dishes are generally better the second day anyway. The tomato sauce on the bottom really ties the whole thing together. I'm not going to tell you this is worth the work or worth the wait. That is for you to decide according to your value system. But I am telling you that's the best lasagna I've ever had, and it may be the best thing I've ever made.